Alrighty, folks, this is According to Callus, and that's me. Yep, we're skipping the video again today. Too many things going on a Monday. I don't know what I'm going to title this. It should be Manic Monday, because I feel like I'm running around like a maniac, so maybe Maniac Monday would be better. However, so I did a catch-up on Saturday, if you will, for missing Friday. And one of the things I talked about was the kind of the BLM, CRT kind of nonsense, right? And by nonsense, I just mean it's stuff that is there, whether I buy into its full legitimacy or not is irrelevant. It's there. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be looked into. And it can't be ignored. And I made the offhanded comment that I really didn't have any interest into studying CRT. Now, I also mentioned that I have an acquaintance of mine that sees it as a tool. And so I guess if I'm willing to accept that it's a tool, and if I'm willing to accept that there is some form of it that actually has a function, then the question is what is that function? What is the end goal? So in other words, if I'm going to use a hammer, I'm going to use that hammer to drive nails or perhaps pull nails. If I'm going to use a screwdriver, I'm going to use that to put in screws or take out screws. If I'm going to use a jigsaw, I'm going to cut a more intricate cut of wood or potentially plastic. So the question is what are you trying to do with CRT? So being that I am not an expert on this, and I kind of off the hand dismissed part of it, the wise counsel stepped in, otherwise known as my wife, and she said, Stephen, you really probably ought not be commenting on that or dismissing it out of hand without first actually taking the time to look into it and understanding it. And she said, the book club that you agreed to do is going to actually be studying or discussing a book that's going to deal with this subject. And that book's title is Fault Lines. And it's written by Vodi Bakum Jr. And if you don't know who Vodi Bakum Jr. is, well, he would be one hardcore conservative Christian dude. And we actually had him speak to us 10 years ago at our church men's retreat. As an aside, I never understood why it would be called a men's retreat. My brother's church always used to call those men's meetings advances because men don't retreat, but I always just think that's a funny aside. So the subtitle to Fault Lines is The Social Justice Movement and Evangelicalism's Looming Catastrophe. So I've just gone through the intro to this over the weekend, and I got to say it is interesting because it gives a glossary, if you will. It gives definitions of what various things mean so that you can have an understanding of what's going to be discussed later on in the book. And being that I've just started reading it, I'm not in a point of reference that I care to explain or go into any detail on it. Needless to say, I'm hoping that after reading this, I will have a pastor's view of this and how this lays out and some of the potential issues that he finds with it. And he has the added benefit of not being a person that looks like me or sounds like me. Indeed, he is a black man that for the last several years has been actually living in Africa doing missions work and running I want to say it is my mind just went blank. He's working at a school, right? A divinity school, I believe. I don't want to get that wrong, so don't quote me exactly on that. Give me a minute. I'm going to just go look that up. So let me jump back in here. So he is the Dean of Theology at African Christian University in Lusaka, Zambia. So I'm guessing that you can't be more African American than a black guy that moves to Africa to do ministry. I'm just saying. And I don't mean that to be disrespectful at all. I mean that with a certain level of awe, right? In any case, and I should also point out, the man does have his doctorate, for those of you who think that is very important. So I'm going to just put that out there. In any case, so this is his book. This is what I'm working on reading. So I imagine that I'll have some commentary on that once I complete it. Much like I had on Slaying Leviathan when I finished reading Dr. Glenn Sunshine's book. So I don't know. What I can tell you is partially this podcast is an opportunity for me to communicate, entertain. What is it? Glenn Beck called it the fusion of entertainment and enlightenment. Well, I don't think I'm going to necessarily enlighten anybody. Perhaps educate occasionally. Perhaps spread the word. Definitely want to entertain a little bit, because who's going to listen to a half-hour podcast if they're not at least slightly entertained? And ultimately, I'm trying to communicate the idea that liberty matters. Liberty translates into the things we do on a daily basis, that we interact with on basic social gatherings, and that we need to be aware of that. So how does that translate to right now? Well, I don't know if you're aware, but the CDC has now once again revised their guidelines. I don't know how many times this is now, and quite frankly, I've lost faith that they actually have a plan or know what they're doing at this point. And that's not to say that I disregard what the CDC does or what they're supposed to do. It just means that I'm kind of about my end, because they just don't seem to have a cognitive, well thought out, implementing plan to take us from point A to point B. And quite frankly, they allowed for a lot of excessive governmental overreach that seems to have had little positive change. And that's just me not knowing much about it, and I see what's going on and what's changing. I'm not impressed. And the irony is, once upon a time, we used to be told that it was the mark of a good American, it was the mark of the patriot to dissent. Peacefully dissent, mind you. In fact, I remember a former First Lady, former Senator, former Secretary of State screaming into a microphone how it was our duty as Americans to dissent. I'm paraphrasing, of course, because I don't really find it in my heart to quote her. Yet, now that the shoe is on the other foot, they seem to silence us. They find the need to shut us down. They cannot allow for any different narrative to exist. And the reality is it's all about the narrative, right? The narrative is the story, and the story is what we're selling so that you'll go along with what we're doing next. And really and truly, I'm not excited about that. I'm not excited about the things that I've seen and heard about going on in Canada and some of the other, let's say, bluer states. In fact, I've been extremely disappointed about some of the things that have gone in Texas. But they've gone on. They're done. They're over with. I'm ready to take the next step. And speaking of taking the next step, yes, I'm going to change subjects again. How many of you are aware that they are still working on the audit in Arizona? And now, apparently, in Wisconsin, they're going to have an audit. Oh, in New Hampshire, they're auditing right now, too. And there's talk that there might be some auditing of the vote in November of 2020 in Louisiana and Georgia. Now, does that sound the least bit off-putting, disturbing? You know, you could blame Trump for so many things, but nowhere in my estimation would a guy that campaigned in his basement be able to beat the juggernaut that is Donald Trump. Now, sure, he had his haters, his detractors, and he earned a good number of them. But does anybody really believe that Sleepy Creepy Joe got 84 million votes? Yeah, I'm still waiting on that. Still waiting on it. He got more votes than Barack, the rock star Obama, or Donald before him. Yeah, things just aren't adding up. And there's lots of evidence to suggest that there's more to come. That this evidence that they've found is just the tip of an iceberg. So we can run around listening to pundits tell us there's nothing to see here. We don't believe that it was widespread. Well, no, it doesn't need to be widespread. I think it's like 12 counties can flip the entire country now with the way they've gamed this system. And quite frankly, I'm a little disappointed. I would have thought that we would want to have election security, that we would want to have integrity in our voting system. But apparently even in Texas, that's too much to ask for, because once again, that bill languishes to an unknown fate and an unknown outcome. And who knows what we're going to actually end up with here in the next couple weeks. Much like the non-constitutional constitutional carry bill that maybe kind of sort of might get to the governor's desk. Yeah, we're all holding our breath on that, aren't we? Speaking of which, I'm going to have Chris McNutt at a meeting I'm doing tonight, and he's going to talk about that very subject. So I'm hoping that he'll have some firsthand useful information as to what exactly is going on in Austin and what the major malfunction seems to be regarding this. I really don't understand why, well, I don't know, 20 other states can have constitutional carry, and I'm holding up quotes because some of them really aren't. I'm thinking like Vermont carry, mind you, but I'll settle for some of the more modified versions, even though they're really and truly just permitless carry at that point, which would be the correct definition of what we put forward to the Senate and what is likely to... Well, actually, that's what came out of the Senate, too. It was some form of permitless carry. It's certainly not constitutional carry. But be that as it may, what's going on with that? I would like to know. Inquiring minds want to know. So, now that I have covered the concerns of the CRT, I have pivoted to the... crazy that is our gun control non-bill, and in between I sprinkled in a little of the lack of confidence in the CDC. Let me just say that to be a politically active person means you have to get used to being disappointed. And why is that? I'll tell you. The people that you elect, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, they always disappoint you. The question is do they disappoint you less than what is the threshold for the need to replacement? The need for you to replace them, or just replacement in general? And I got to tell you, I don't have the answer to that. I can tell you that the lackluster representation we're getting out of Congress, the lackluster representation we get in the House, the less than stellar representation we get in the Senate, it begs the question. If Collin County is supposed to be this red county in the red state, why do we have such weak-kneed individuals representing us? You know, I've often commented on how I would just love to have one Stickland or one Rinaldi out of Collin County to go and step up to that back mic and challenge things, to fight the good fight. Even if they go down and lose, I would have been enthusiastic about that. Instead, we get mediocrity, muddling middleness of nothingness. Hey, but they got a chance to virtue signal by taking down some statues, or at least voting to support that, or covering up or removing some plaque that nobody even really knew about, or, oh, well, we granted you back your liberty that we allowed the governor to take when he had no business nor authority to take it, but we're going to recognize it now, just so you know. Oh, I'm so enthusiastic about that. Let me just tell you. I'm so excited to know that you're all going to recognize a pre-existing liberty that really has been notated since at least 1776 and then ratified in 1789 and, 2021, since we stomped all over that, put our boot on your neck. We're going to take it off just a little bit and let you know that we're going to recognize it. And then, of course, the conservative response is, well, at least we're not like Canada, right? Where they're arresting pastors for daring to hold a service. At least we're not like, this blue state where this governor's unhinged. At least we're not locking up our old people so they can die in their care facilities. Again, not impressed. Not helpful. Always having to settle. I'm tired of it. You should be tired of it. But don't get mad. Get active. Don't be angry. Get agitated. Agitate them. Part of what I do is just stir the pot. Part of what I do is just bringing the issues to the forefront. Just making the general public aware that we have other options. We can do other things. In fact, that's one of the primary reasons why I talk about Texit. Now, do I think Texit's panacea? No. Do I think we're going to get everything we want out of it? No. But I do know that there's a lot of people that are very uncomfortable when we talk about it. In fact, I do know the feds dread that more than pretty much anything else. And when you say it's been settled, it was settled once in 1865. It's been 150 years plus. I say we try again. I say we make them earn it again. Because we want a do-over. Just like they go to the courts to get a do-over for darn near everything that they lose in the vote, I say we start doing the same thing in reverse. I say we make them earn it. I say we keep fighting. I say we take the advance in the battle to them. I say instead of, I think the term is cucking, instead of cowering, instead of running away to, quote, conserve this, why don't we advance liberty? Why don't we take that and march on forward? All my friends out there that love that flag and they got to fly their flag, what are you doing about it? When are you going to get off your duff and make something be felt? All my friends out there that sit at home and complain about taxes or complain about this or complain about that, this is your opportunity. Get off your keister. Go out. Support somebody. Make some noise. Yeah. The municipal elections are largely over. There's a few runoff races, couple in Plano, couple in Frisco, McKinney not so much. Yeah, you should support those people. You should go give them a little money. You should go give them a little loving. Maybe take some block walking for them, handed out some pamphlets. We need to get them across the finish line. But if we just keep stopping to play defense, stopping to, quote, conserve this or conserve that, we're not doing anything. We need to advance. We need to advance the cause of liberty. We need to advance what is important. And kowtowing and hiding behind other people is not helpful. Yes, we're not going to get everything. And yes, we're going to lose. And yes, it's going to be difficult. And yes, it's going to be a challenge. But the left has taught us a lesson. That every little bit gained adds up. Every little bit they take adds up. Who would have thought 20 years ago some of the crazy stuff we've got going on now would have ever happened? Who would have thought 50 years ago the absolute ridiculousness that is 2020 would have ever occurred? Nobody I can think of, and yet it did. And there was very little said about it. I mean, the churches were largely silent. It took a couple of Canadian pastors getting arrested to wake anybody up. Heck, one Polish immigrant pastor up in Canada chased those people out by calling them the Stasi and the Gestapo. And for his trouble, they arrested him 2 weeks later. But I don't think he's bowed. I don't think he's quitting. I don't think he's running away. Yet, our little pastors in the States got their little free handout from the feds. They agreed to shut down. They agreed to just be a whisper. They refused to assert the authorities they were given. the authority in their sphere. And why is that? Because it's easy. We need to celebrate the soft men. We need to celebrate the feminization of darn near everything. If men can't be men, and if men aren't going to defend their families, and if men aren't going to lead, that's not good. It's only going to bring about a curse. You should look up what happens. It's kind of eye-opening. It's kind of disturbing. I don't have the answer of what all our judgment's going to be, but I only wonder, being that we've allowed for the slaughter of over 60 million people in our country, when we trot out all the dead from the Black Book of Communism, all those evil socialists that have killed people, and yet we've done a pretty good job of murdering our own people in our own country. Yet, because 5 people in a robe said it was okay, we just go along with it. So I ask you, what are you going to do about it? You have to get agitated. You have to agitate them. You have to force people to do what it is they're supposed to do. You have to be involved. You can continue to skate through life and sit at home and complain while eating your Twinkies or your nachos or sipping your beer. But the fact of the matter is nothing changes until we bring that change about. Nothing improves until we demand it. The left is very, very good at that. The left has been leading like this for years, for decades, and we have just sat here and watched it happen. Now, I can't do this alone. I'm here reminding you. I'm here ringing the darn bell. Please get off your butts and do something. But the reality is, I'm just one man, and I can do one thing. Now I have my daughters, and they're off doing their own thing. I have my wife, and she's doing her part. But the reality is, one family cannot do it all. We need other families. We need other men. We need other leaders. We need to work together. We need to continue to build upon what we've been doing. We need to expand our reach, our voice, our network. They talk about building an army. Well, you can't have an army without leaders. And you can't have an army without sergeants. And you can't have an army without soldiers. So yeah, go ahead, name yourself a general, but if you ain't got anybody following you, you aren't much of a general. Go ahead, say you're just a sergeant, you don't have any control. Yeah, but when you have the initiative open, you should take it. When you have that opportunity, the initiative makes all the difference. That makes things happen. Every little win matters. Every little bit of advancement that we take adds up, and we have to do it, and we have to do it together. My friends, we need to think about the future. We need to think about what we're leaving for our children and our children's children. It is our responsibility, our duty to make sure that we leave a country that we recognize and that they can enjoy when we are no longer able to defend it. My friends, I'm cutting it short. This is According to Callus. I will see you on the other side.